Just have a few brief announcements before the family enters the sanctuary, the family of Mrs. Irene E. Shanes. Just a gentle reminder, folks, if you have a cell phone with you, please place it in the silent mode or turn it off completely. That would be appreciated. The services this afternoon will be conducted by Rabbi Michael Schwab and Rabbi Alex Friedman. The interment will follow directly from the synagogue service today, and it's at the Menorah Gardens Cemetery in Broadview. There was a little confusion. Some people apparently thought it was Waldheim. The cemetery is run by Waldheim, but it's actually in Broadview. The address is 2630 South 17th Avenue. Now, we will be going in procession, and we will be marking those vehicles with an orange funeral sticker, as well as a magnetic flag for the top of your car. But please be careful. We will be taking the tollway to get to the cemetery and then the Eisenhower Expressway, and use your bright headlights and your emergency flashers at all times, and use your horn liberally if needed. But again, the cemetery is Menorah Gardens in Broadview, South 17th Avenue. It will be just slightly over an hour to get to the cemetery. The Shiva will be observed at the Shanes residence, 321 Red Oak Lane in Highland Park. And please refer to your service folder. And for those of you joining us online, this information is on our website as well, and also has the minyan times. The following grandchildren will be serving as pallbearers: Shoshana, Rachel, Sarah, Hannah, Noah, Rosa, Levi, Brooke, Shanes, and Ari and Toby Frankel.
In memory of Irene Shanes, I'll begin with Psalm 23. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo achzar, b'nodeh sheyar bitzeni, al menuchot tinahaleni, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech begei tzal mavet, lo yira ra ki atay imadi, Shiftecha mishan techa hema yenachamuni. Taroch lefanai shochan neget tzorai. Tishanta v'Hashem roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yurdafuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti b'beit Adonai le'orech yamim.
Together, let's read the English of the 23rd Psalm. Please open to the second page of your pamphlet, and we'll read together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. I'll continue now by reading the 15th Psalm. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagor b'oholecha, mi yishkon b'har kodshecha, holech tamim ufo el tzedek, v'dover emet bilvavo. Lo ragal al leshono, lo asa lebehu ra'a, v'charpa lo nasa al kiravo. Nivzeh be'enav nim'as, ve'et Adonai b'chabed, nishbara ha'hava v'lo yamir, kaspo lo natan b'neshech, v'shochad al naki lo lakach, ose ele lo yimot le'olam. A Psalm of David. Do we deserve to enter God's sanctuary? Can we merit a place in the presence of God? Live with integrity. Do what is right. Speak the truth without deceit. Have no slander upon your tongue. Do no evil to others. Do not mistreat your neighbor. Spurn a contemptible person, but honor those who revere Adonai. Never retract a promise once made, though it may bring you harm. Lend no money at unfair rates. Accept no bribe against the innocent. Make these deeds your own. Then shall you stand firm forever. Amen.
And speaking with the family, and everybody who knew Irene knows she was truly a beautiful and wonderful woman, inside and out. There, of course, as many of you know from Proverbs, a beautiful poem about an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. It talks about a person whose worth is far beyond rubies, who everybody who knows her puts their confidence in her. A person who opens her hand to the needy, extends her hand to the poor, is clothed with strength and splendor, looking to the future cheerfully, opening her mouth with wisdom, and having her tongue guided by kindness, overseeing all the activities of her household, that her children come forward and bless her, and that her husband praises her most of all and says, "Many have done superbly, but you surpass them all." We extol the fruit of her hands, and whenever people gather, her deeds will always speak her praise. Amen. When somebody passes, we sometimes wonder, where will they be in our lives? What difference do our lives make to those who are left behind? And in Judaism, the answer is very clear. The person who passed is still with us. The person who passed is still in our lives in so many different ways. And one of those ways is through the legacy that they left, the impression that they made, the influence they had on all the people they knew, but most especially their children. And thus our philosopher Ben Sira wrote, when parents who have taught their children pass on, that passing is not true death. As long as the child lives, and even more so the grandchildren, that person can never die. When alive, a parent rejoices with her children, and in death that parent will not grieve, for she knows that her legacy will be passed on, l'dor vador, from one generation to the next, forever. In loving memory of their mother and their grandmother, I'm now going to call on some family members to speak. One of their granddaughters, Rosa, will begin.
Hi, I'm Rosa, Irene's granddaughter, for those who don't know me. My grandmother was a loved and loving member of so many communities, so I'm sure some of you don't. I want to first offer my sincere condolences and gratitude to everyone here. It's a beautiful thing to gather to love someone for no reason but to remember and love them. As some of you have probably experienced, grief and love are two sides of the same coin. We allow love to grow and strengthen, and then correspondingly feel profound sadness when that person is no longer with us. Being as young as I am, it's very easy to love so much and not have to face the other side of the coin. I'm lucky that my friends and family are healthy, and generally speaking, there's not very much to lose at 20 years old. There's also so much to love. But by not facing the grief that is a natural partner, I think I sometimes don't understand the meaning of the love, the weight of it. We realize how much we love people when we lose them. So I feel exceptionally lucky to have known someone who somehow made you recognize how deeply profound your love was without even having lost them. My grandmother was a firm advocate of gratitude, and so perhaps it's not surprising that we felt so grateful for her every day. Although she's had many people sitting with her these last few difficult weeks and has many texting calls, it won't surprise people to know that this was not actually much of a change. She got weekly calls from me, along with her other grandchildren, her friends' children, her friends' grandchildren, her family, and probably you at some point if you're here. She took these calls while making meals for all of said people, while driving us to school, while eating a piece of rye toast and egg for breakfast, and shuffling around the kitchen in her slippers, sharing in moments of love, sometimes hundreds or thousands of miles apart. She is often praised, and should be, for her deeply caring nature, for her ability to make lists, for her dedication to family and to community. She should also be praised for her sharp sense of humor, her appreciation of wit and cleverness, her dancing, which needed no notes, her immense pride at my grandfather's garden and his ability to grow a home as beautiful as her, and for her innate sense of when someone needed care. She had a special and unique relationship with everyone she loved, but also, it seemed, with anyone she interacted with. There are a number of restaurants which I can walk into and say I'm Mrs. Shanes' granddaughter, and I immediately receive a kind welcome. There's no one untouched by her affection and acceptance and love. Her devotion to everyone else in her life is unmatched. She was never the center of her own universe, so I put her at the center of mine. She was one of my biggest and most fervent advocates, my most trusted confidant, my greatest joy, and my most missed person, one of my best friends. She played the role of several people for me and did it all with grace and ease and joy and love and without second thought. I feel immense joy in thinking of her, and felt it when I called or saw her, when I cooked a fried egg or saw a purple jacket or ate a particularly delicious pie or comforted a friend. I know in the coming weeks and months and years, these moments of love and of joy will be very sad because we will think of her and miss her. And what a blessing that our love for her is so great that we feel so much grief. If it was even possible for me to love her more, I would love her 1,000 times over and accept the grief's exponential growth. I hope we continue to grieve because of how much we loved and continue to love wholeheartedly in spite of inevitable grief. May we find comfort in each other and continue to remember a person who is kind, funny, charming, organized, generous, humble, passionate, considerate, and not always perfect, but mostly and always endlessly loving.
Now I'm going to call Shoshana up to say some words about her grandmother as well.
Thank you. I have no words of wisdom. I cannot explain the agony of losing the person who stars in my first 3 memories of life. I have no way to explain the hole, the void, the ache that Safta's passing leaves us with. So I won't try. Instead, in times like this, I create an agenda, a plan, an actionable way to move forward and live in a manner that intentionally honors someone so immensely important in my life. I asked myself, how do I live Safta's legacy? 2 ideas quickly emerged. The first of those stems from something I've known about Safta forever. Safta, almost on an impulse, answers the phone every time. Even if she's checking out at Jewel or on the line with someone else, I'm sure many of you know what I'm talking about. You call Safta, and without saying hello, she jumps into what she's up to, which is 9 times out of 10 on a call with someone else that she ended to talk to you. This is how I've stayed abreast of family developments, birthdays, simchas, and dare I say, a little bit of gossip. This is how I first learned Ben was engaged to Katie. This is how I found out Dean started at Tisch at NYU. This is how I know how Nancy's bees are doing each season. And inevitably, my call with her would end because someone else called her. Or, even worse, the house phone and her cell would ring simultaneously. A conundrum of the ages. To say she was popular is an understatement. By picking up the phone, chatting, and sharing that intel, Safta was a hub that connected spokes of the family around the country and around the world. So the first item in my plan is to pick up the phone. I'll hear about how you're doing from you. I'll share our simchas, sorrows, and stories. No single one of us can replicate the effect she had, but I, or we, if you'll join me, can do our best to continue to foster the large, unified family that Safta developed and cherished. The second action item grows out of something I learned recently, really in the past 2 weeks, through speaking with so many of you and spending a lot of time with my rather large family. I've always known my relationship with Safta is special, unique. Grandmother, granddaughter doesn't begin to describe it. Something like confidant, co-conspirator, kindred spirit comes a little closer. And not that it's a competition, but if it was about a competition about who has the most special relationship with Safta, 2 weeks ago I would have said I'd won. What I realized, probably 27 years too late, is that each of us in this room has a special and unique relationship with Safta. I imagine wife, mother, aunt, or friend doesn't begin to describe it either. Safta was so much more to all of us. Each of us would say we'd win that competition, and each of us would be right. How incredible that one woman, one mighty woman, could foster a deep, loving, trusting connection with so many people. That each of us here and many others, both unable to be here today and looking down on us, would attest to their uniquely special relationship with Safta. And I'm in awe. I'm amazed that one person living the same 24 hours as the rest of us grew and nourished so many meaningful relationships. So item 2 is to intentionally grow and foster special relationships with you, my family. Family that Safta built, and I am lucky enough to be born into. Obviously, this plan isn't assuaging the grief we feel. Allow me to paraphrase Rosa's rendition of Saba's rendition of Bubby's saying, grief is felt in proportion to love. The love is great, the grief is too. And in that grief, I will focus on doing what Safta did best, picking up the phone and making the person on the other end feel like the most special person in the world. Thank you.
Now I'm going to call one of our sons, Josh, to say some words about his mother. There's water and tissues here.
Shus Avimori Rav. Itzias Tzadik min Amakom Osoroishem. Shbizman Shatzadik Ba'ir Hu Hoda Hu Ziva Hu Hadara. Yatsami Sham Panaoda Panaziva Panadara. The departure of a righteous person from their city makes an impression. Yet as long as a righteous person is in the city, they are its glory and splendor and beauty. And when they leave it, there departs also its glory, its splendor, and its beauty. It's Rashi. The splendor of our city and beyond has departed from us. The most selfless, the strongest, the most joyful, the most loving, and honestly the most organized person we have ever known. So many people found comfort, love, support, and joy in her love and guidance and friendship. And such a small body held up so many worlds without so much as an email account, let alone social media. I don't think she even once went on the internet. She devoted herself to us all. As Rosa and Shoshana recently just said, it was her gift that everyone felt that they had a special relationship with her. Everyone felt they had something no one else had. And I thought about this, and I suspect it's because she gave herself entirely to that person when she was with them. Not just family, not just friends, really everyone. Doctors, nurses, the cashiers at Emma's, who continue to ask me how she's doing when they see me. I don't think there's a soul on earth who she met who didn't adore her. She simply radiated joy to everyone around her. She was able to keep everyone's lives organized in her mind without ever letting on to others that this was happening. She kept every story to herself if it was private, but when it was joyful, she couldn't wait to share the gossip. That's her word. So rarely did we hear about her own life, and certainly not about any discomfort or pain. These she kept to herself, only sharing if it was truly urgent, which is particularly remarkable in contrast to the well-known inability of Shane's men to suffer even so much as a cold without drama. As I thought about why I was so affected last week by her asking for help, by saying the words to help me, I realized the reason was in part that in 51 years, I don't think I ever heard her say those words to me. I said them to her countless times, endless times, in her presence from across the country. She always came, no matter what I needed, but I literally cannot recall her ever asking me for help a single time. I don't have time to describe the extent to which she gave herself to each of us as we grew up, or me personally, the extent to which she cared for us, made our home safe and warm and loving to come home to. Just endless stories. Our home was always open to everyone, extended family, and honestly, who wasn't family, my parents' friends, our friends, random people we met in Europe or Israel or Australia to whom we confidently offered hospitality should they ever be in Chicago, which somehow they always ended up being. There was always room, always a bed with clean sheets, always plenty of food. And just the food, I would be remiss not to think of her cooking right now. The brisket, the orange chicken, lasagna, zucchini bread, the carrot cake that was, we later found out, 50% Crisco. It was very good. I don't know what to tell you. I often joke, except it's not a joke, that during the 7 years I was alone with my children in Charleston, I had a fantastic recipe for spaghetti. I made a pot of noodles, and then I took out of one of the many packages of homemade sauce that my mother had left for me in her last visit, and I mixed them together. It was brilliant. Fleischig, obviously, like most of Mom's dinners were Fleischig. My mom was raised in a classic German-Jewish family from the South Side, Hyde Park, Standard Club, Temple KM, pro-Israel, without Hebrew names, deeply embedded in Jewish social circles, deeply committed to endogamy, but with fresh, and I have to say, forgive me, delicious homemade bacon on Sunday mornings. It really was quite good. And, you know, don't you dare have your head covered at the table. And then she married, at 20 years old, my father from West Rogers Park, what we in the business call Ostjuden, Yiddish Yidden. And so my mom embraced post-war East European conservative Judaism with its Hebrew language services and kosher homes with separate dishes and Passover mishigas and all the rest. And together with my father, sacrificed deeply to send her 5 sons through 9 years of Solomon Schechter in the hopes of instilling in them a Jewish identity and commitment, which in my case, I have to say, may not have had the effect they intended. Speaking of which, when I became Orthodox 30 years ago, she immediately worked to understand and support me, despite the fact that it must have seemed incredibly bizarre, even before I turned truly bizarre. My first Shabbos home from Israel, she walked almost 3 miles to shul with me. As I turned left to head to Chabad, and she finished the walk to Beth El on her own, rather than going with my dad, so that I would have company, at least part of the way. And when I really headed for Chabad, joining a subculture to which she had no frame of reference, she adjusted again and worked to support me in every way that she could, even while protecting the space of everyone else around her in the ways that they needed. I was really too young and too blind to see it, and she never burdened me with understanding. At least we could always share bridge together. She could proudly tell me when she solved the bridge column, which she read every day. And she was, I have to say, I would be remiss not to point out that she was a very fine player. Although I will say, and I didn't write this down, but thinking at it now as I look at my dad, this may be the one place where her patience could run a little thin. Forgive me, Dad. It would be impossible to describe the level of support that she gave me in subsequent years, helping me through the hardest times in my life, helping literally to raise my children, and much more. When I think now of what she gave us, together with my father, Sheikhya, I shudder at the enormity of it. If I were her only son and these her only grandchildren, it would have been beyond incredible. To consider it in the context of everyone else in her life, and let's face it, the 5 of us alone would be quite enough to keep an army of parents busy. It is nothing short of miraculous. While I was happy to make her proud, and she expressed joy in even the meanest of our accomplishments, my truest joy with her was making her laugh. She loved to laugh, and she really loved our bizarre sense of humor. Even at the end, when she no longer had the strength to laugh, she found smiles responding to the love and sweetness and jokes around her, and those smiles just made you feel alive. And what were the last things she shared before she lost her voice? This is absolutely true. She wanted to make sure that we knew what she had for us to eat in the refrigerator, to check where I was sleeping and confirm that it had clean sheets, and that she loved us. The splendor of our world has departed from us. Fortunate are they who were blessed to know her.
Her son Bob will now say a few words. If you need, there's tissues and water.
Okay, perfect. This is going to be a bit more brief. Throughout my life, whenever I met new people or made a new friend who discovered that I'm one of 5 brothers, after a brief moment of shock, their immediate response was consistently the same. Wow, your mother must be a saint. And they were right. And not just because she cooked for my dad and 5 growing boys gourmet meals every night of the week, year after year, while somehow managing to work. And not just because she created a warm Jewish household where we could celebrate holidays and Shabbat and all the special occasions. It was wonderful little gestures she made every day, like waking us up for school while gently touching our kepis, singing, "Good morning to you, good morning to you. We're all in our places with sun-shining faces." And she did that pretty much every morning. And it wasn't only what she said, but how she always said it. She adoringly called her family and many other people in this room, Dolly. "I love you, Dolly. I'm here for you, Dolly. What can I get you to eat, Dolly?" Her ability to see us in our best light was one of her amazing gifts. And her love and appreciation for life and sense of gratitude was always present. She genuinely cared deeply about all the people she loved and would always, no matter what else was happening, stop and just listen, as Shoshana pointed out. So few people truly just listen to others. And my mom was the queen of listeners. She honestly, lovingly, truly heard and felt so many of us, and was always a voice of love, calm, and support, without ever wanting anything in return. Anyone who was lucky enough to have her part of their lives was better for it. Throughout my life, I've strived to be more like my mom, and I continue to work on that today. To listen better, to give and love selflessly. She was my role model for appreciating life and for what great parenting should be. To emulate her parenting is an impossible task, but fortunately, since my kids are only 11 and 9, I still have time to keep trying. I had the perfect mom. She was so perfect that she would never want to be thought of as being perfect. Thanks.
Now I'm going to invite her son, Dan, to say some words. There's tissues and water here.
Yeah, thanks. It is such a privilege to have been Mom's son. What Mom and Dad together did, well, you've heard so much. The words that Rosa and Shoshana said, Safta loved all her grandchildren, a perfect baker's dozen of grandchildren, so much. And 5 boys. How anyone could survive that has to be a miracle. For everyone here, in person or remotely, welcome to the Zoom world. Mom was someone special. Wife, mother, sister, Safta, aunt, friend. I cannot think, as you've heard others say, of anyone who was more central to more people. She made sure each of us knew we were special. You're starting to hear recurring themes. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, never have so many owed so much to one person. This might be an odd time to talk about the meaning of life, or maybe it's not. Mom and Dad taught the importance of living a life of meaning. Mom modeled that, as you've heard, as a spouse, as a parent, as a grandparent, as a friend, every day. Mom always worried about and prioritized others before herself. She was always there for each of us, providing comfort, guidance, sage advice. She touched so remarkably so many lives. These past few months, as things became clearer, Mom and I would talk about her dying and how she felt about it. Sad, she said, but not so much about herself, but for how sad all of us would be. Classic Mom. Mom's been described as the matriarch of our family, but what does that even mean? Mom was our matriarch, not simply because she was a elder lady in our family, but because she nurtured and supported and guided and brought us all together as family, even if we were not necessarily family before. Or maybe we were from different branches of the family tree, not actually technically related to each other, except all of us are tied together because of her. She was truly the mother of a family of families. Individuals who were otherwise not connected with each other, she brought together into a greater family. That's magical. And that was Mom. As you've heard, one of Mom's love languages was food, and she loved us a lot. Let all who are hungry come and eat. Each week before Shabbat, or for weeks leading up to holidays, Mom cooked and baked and cooked some more. Somehow, in retrospect, we didn't seem terribly bothered at how hard she was working in the kitchen. To be fair, she accepted help as long as it was done her way and up to her standards. Truly, she loved being in the kitchen with her grandchildren. Sharing those experiences around so much of our family time was centered. Never occurred to me, Mom, last time I had your gefilte fish or your herring or your kugel, it would be the last time. I don't know how Olam Haba looks like, but I know it smells like your kitchen. If you haven't thought about it before, the hand is an extraordinary part of the body. Aside from its remarkable functionality, the hand has incredible versatility. For example, we ordinarily may not think of the hand as a method of communication, but it is. A wave of the hand or holding up a couple fingers, or maybe one finger, can mean so much. Not that Mom knew that. More than that, the gentle touch of a soft caress can speak volumes more than mere words. Over the past several days, as I sat by your bed holding your hand, I found myself thinking about all that those hands had done. With those hands, you and Dad built a home, a family, a life that serves as a model for all of us. Those hands fought fiercely for your family and lovingly supported and cared for Dad, the love of your life, and your children and grandchildren and so many others that you loved. Those hands raised us 5 boys, bandaged countless injuries, made innumerable school lunches, held us as babies, and throughout our lives. Sitting there, looking at your hand, I was overwhelmed by cascading memories and emotions, reminders of so many important values and lessons that you've taught all of us for so many years. Somehow, all of that from just your hand. And as I was holding your hand those last days and hours, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was actually you holding my hand, telling me it'd be all right. People say that funerals are about goodbyes. I suppose in some ways that's true. But in some ways, I do not necessarily think so. The important part of who we are are reflected by the choices that we make, how we live our lives. When a person lives a life of meaning, living the values that Mom did, as Rabbi said, we don't truly lose that person if we carry on those values. By making those values our own, by living our own lives with meaning, they stay with us the rest of our lives. L'dor vador, from generation to generation, the most important parts live on. So if food was one of Mom's love languages, her true love language was really us, all of us. She was there for us. And no doubt to her chagrin, there simply were not enough hours in each day for her to get on the phone and talk with each of us every day. And of course, it was really more than talking. It was showing up. As my Bubby used to say, and Mom used to say, our priorities include gathering for simchas and happy occasions as much as anything else. Just consider the last 18 months. We had 3 weddings in our family. Mom made it, cancer and chemo and all, to the 2 in California, and checked yourself out of the hospital to walk down the aisle and dance last year at Shoshana and Rachel's wedding. If we ever needed a true demonstration of true grit, of real commitments to our values and our priorities, we need to look no further. Mom wanted to make a difference in our lives. Look at everyone here. She did. There's so many lessons, so many things, so many things that you've already heard. One thing Mom taught me was, in life, it's about moving forward. Maybe I shouldn't say it from the bema, but for the past couple of weeks, all the way up to now, I've pretty much thought this whole mom dying thing really sucked. And it does. But today, being together, sharing our grief, hearing from some of Mom's children and grandchildren and each other how for all of us, she quietly but strongly led her life of meaning, how those values help shape who we are. We can see and we can know that her legacy lives on. We may not be able to talk like we did before, Mom, but you're not gone from me. You're there every time I talk with my kids. I'll feel your love every time I hold the little hands of our grandchildren when the time comes, God willing. I'll see you every time I look in their faces. You'll be there every Shabbat when we light candles. You'll be there every Seder, even if Seder is at our house. We have seen what you have shown us, and we will carry that light forward. We will always hold you in our hearts, every one of us.
During the holiday of Purim, celebrated only 2 days ago, we read Megillat Esther, named after the heroine of the story. As many of you know, Esther is described as being beautiful, and her actions show you that she was smart and brave. And yet what might have been most incredible about her was actually her selfless devotion to others. Think about it. She became the queen at the request of her uncle to be helpful to her community, and she risked her life and personal happiness to save the Jewish people when her aid was required. The needs of others always came before her own. Today we come to honor the cherished life of Irene Shanes, Shulamit Bat Raphael Vabacha. Irene was also beautiful. She was also smart, and she was also strong and brave. But perhaps most importantly for her as well, she also led a life of such selfless and such a giving way, always caring for others and rarely thinking of herself. She was an Ishat Tzadeket, a righteous woman full of love and compassion. The world is definitely a poorer place without her, and she will be sorely missed. Thus, it is my very sad honor to extend my condolences and those of my fellow clergy, including Rabbi Kurtz from Israel, and those of the entire NSS Bethel community, to Irene's family, to her devoted husband Sam, to her cherished children Daniel and Diane, Robert and Katya, Joshua and Elisheva, Jacob and Jonathan, to her adored grandchildren Shoshana and Rachel, Sarah, Hannah, Noah, Lev, Nadia, Bracha, Levi, Rosa, Ezra, Toby, and Ari, and to her beloved sister Barbara, and to all of her family and friends, which, as you heard, she loved so very much. My prayer today is simple, that the words we share and the traditions we observe provide some measure of comfort at a very difficult time. I feel very privileged to have had my own relationship with Irene, and I won't repeat what everyone said. She made me feel special too, and I loved her smile and her laugh, and I wish I could continue to hear it again today. But I had a beautiful moment with Sam yesterday, and he shared with me a lot about Irene's life and about their relationship, and I just want to share a little bit of it. Some of you might know that she was a Valentine's baby born in Hollywood, California in 1944, and she moved to Chicago when she was 6. She grew up with lovely parents and her wonderful older sister, Barbara. And Sam told me that the family said that she was social from the very start, always cared about people from the time that she was little. Sam told me that he and Irene met the summer after high school, and I hope I get this right, when they were taking a rhetoric class at U of I Navy Pier, which was a required course before entering the fall semester in Champaign. Sam had dated a girl named Alice who was friends with Irene, and she told Sam to look for her. So Sam finally recalls with a chuckle that on the first day of class, he approached a girl he thought was Irene and introduced himself as if she was expected to know who he was. The only problem was that girl was not Irene. Meanwhile, the actual Irene was standing right near them while this was happening, and comically, and I imagine with a big smile, let it all unfold without saying a word. They soon became friends, though, and less than 2 years later, if I got my dates right, they were engaged and married 10 years after that, around Sam's birthday, so he told her that she was always the best birthday present ever. Sam recalls the wedding fondly at Irene's parents' house in Hyde Park, with each of the family's rabbis present, because both dads had been presidents of their respective shuls. When I asked Sam what originally drew him to Irene, he told me that she was indeed beautiful and smart, and that it was clear to him from how she interacted with others, and most especially with him, that she truly and deeply cared about other people. To be in her life was simply to be loved, and he was all in. And Sam knew that she would be an amazing wife, an amazing mother, an amazing partner. And of course, he was absolutely right. Sam, for over 58 years, you've been life partners with Irene, so I truly can't imagine your sense of loss today. And at the same time, you are blessed to have decades of love and partnership with her, to have raised a large, beautiful family together, to have created a beautiful chevra of friends whom I know and I've seen, and to have become a large part of our Jewish community here, right here at Bethel. A love like that surely transcends death. And as I and Dan have both said, I truly believe that Irene will always be with you. You heard from some of the kids, so I'm not going to say too much about her as a mother, but I will just share my own admiration for her devotion to that role. It's been said, but I think bears repeating, many people have said, now that's how a mother should be. And they looked at Irene as the role model for what it meant to be a mother and a grandmother. She was, as Dan said, the true matriarch of the family in the full meaning of that word, bringing everyone together and making sure everyone felt loved and had what they needed. As Rabbi Kurtz wrote to me from Jerusalem, and I quote, I was always amazed that after raising a brood of 5 boys, Irene remained so sweet, gentle, and calm. Truly amazing. End quote. She instilled the importance of Judaism and Jewish values in her children as well, and made sure everyone had a strong Jewish education at Schechter and through all of their experiences here at Bethel. And as you heard too, as a grandmother, she was unparalleled and utterly devoted. I'm just going to share a couple quick facts that I can't match the emotionality for our own grandchildren. But think about this. As a grandmother, she was driving Schechter carpools for her grandkids all the time, sometimes all the way from Mundelein, or even driving down to Akiba Schechter to help with her grandchildren there. They lived in Highland Park. Wherever she was needed, she made sure to be present. Any time spent with grandchildren was cherished by her, and any time helping a loved one, well, that was time well spent. Sam shared as well that because of her, their house was the place where family came together. And he fondly recalls their huge Passover Seders, where every family member was welcome, and any guest that anybody wanted to bring would always have a place. They would move all the living room furniture out to accommodate everyone, and they held joyous, wonderful Passover Seders, as well as second day of Rosh Hashanah meals and many other Shabbatot. She loved her family so very, very much, extending her deep love to grandnephews, nieces, cousins, anybody. She truly was the matriarch. Sam also recalled how much she loved taking kids and grandkids on trips, especially to Israel. The family recalls wonderful vacations to Door County and many other places. And recently, she and Sam had really wanted to take Rachel and Shoshana to Israel, but Irene, alas, said that she no longer had the strength. but she absolutely insisted that Sam and Dan go with them because she wanted them to have that experience. She cared so deeply about her husband, her kids, her grandchildren. Sam said that, in fact, one of her last sentences to him was, and I quote, "Have joy with the children, and let the children have joy with you." Thinking of others with her last words, thinking of love and family with her final thoughts. I want to share with you something that the family didn't yet talk about, which is that her compassionate nature also shined through in a very distinguished professional life. After U of I, she became an occupational therapist at RIC for a while Sam finished law school. She stopped working outside the home once the kids were born, but when Jonathan was young, she went back to school to become a school psychologist. With that degree, she worked at NSSED and specifically in Wilmette Junior High for at least another 15 years. She helped hundreds, if not thousands, of kids over her career with her wise and compassionate nature. Wouldn't you want Irene as your school psychologist? I would. And she only retired in order to be the best grandmother ever, so she could help take care of all of those kids. And even in retired life, she didn't stop giving back to children, as she volunteered for almost 15 years with Kids Corner, taking care of children when their parents needed to be in court. Irene, as many of you know here, was an amazing friend. She made friends at every stage of life and kept so many of them throughout her entire lifetime. Childhood friends, high school friends, college friends, work friends, Bethel friends, friends wherever she went. Sam and the kids shared that every place she frequented, everyone knew her, and she knew them, including much of their life story. People were drawn to her. They opened up to her. As you heard, she was a great listener. She was always reliable. She was compassionate and absolutely and completely trustworthy. You could find no better friend. She and Sam made this synagogue truly their home. They were regulars at Bethel for services, for learning of all kinds. Sam is still in my Talmud class, and so many other programs. They had a study group, they hosted meals, and they made great friends here. Bethel will truly miss Irene, and we are honored that she was such an active and passionate member of our community. While there may not be an official Megillat Irene, to her family and to this community, Irene will always be remembered for her beauty inside and out, her kindness, her wisdom, her compassion, and her love. May the soul of Irene Shanes Shulamit Bat Raphael Vabacha be bound in the bond of everlasting life. May she rest in peace, and let everyone here say, Amen. I'm going to kindly ask everyone to please stand for the memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Ashchina, B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utorim, Kezohar Harakia Masirim, Et Nishmat Shulamit, Bat Raphael Vabacha Shalcha Le'olama, Began Eden Tzei Menuchata, Ana, Bal HaRachamim, Hastirei B'Seiter Kenafecha Le'olamim, Utror B'Torah Chaim Nishmata, Adonai Unachlata, V'tanu Ok B'Shalom Amishkava, V'nomar, Amen.
Amen. El Malei Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Irene Shanes, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that a loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
We'll ask the pallbearers to please step forward and behind the casket as we escort Irene out of the sanctuary.